So my own therapy journey started around last December when I asked for online therapy as a Christmas gift, and it has absolutely changed my life. One of the biggest lessons that I learned while going on this journey on my own and figuring out a routine for myself is learning that there is really not one way to heal ourselves. I think that the self-care industry often tries to sell us this idea of a prescribed formula to healing, but there really isn't one. Not only do we all have different brains, different ways of healing, different ways of understanding, we also have our own karmic bonds, and we have our own very specific life paths, and this is obviously way more spiritual than like the more technical ways of how a brain is built and how to heal that, but I definitely believe that although we have agency, there are things that I was sent to be on Earth to do. I don't think there's a rigid path from A to Z. I think it's a lot of non-linear things that come into your life when you're ready for it. So in the therapy that I do, the way that the courses are set up is that there is a path that you could go on if you need that kind of structure, but it's constantly reinstated that it's not at all necessary. I think this is really important to look at because I think people find it really hard to let go of control. At least I did. I grew up reading a lot of self-help books, I was always on blogs, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, I watched a lot of other people talk about their own therapy journey, and by doing the most, right, by researching, by reading what everybody else is reading, I was trying to gain some semblance of control, as if I actually had control over what the universe was going to give me when it knows I'm ready for it. And this is not to say that we don't have agency. I think we do. This is the reason why a lot of people can remain unconscious their whole lives. This is the reason why a lot of people refuse to seek or accept help even until the end of their lives. I think you have complete agency in rejecting things that the universe gives you. But in terms of our soul purpose, I think that's so intrinsic and that's so intuitive. I think that a lot of people shy away from the idea of a soul path, whether or not you're spiritual. I think a lot of people want life to be linear and categorical and like this math equation that you'll be able to solve by the time you hit 60 or whatever age you think you'll somehow become wise. And I don't think that's the case. I think that you're always going to be stepping into your higher self and then retreating back to your shadow self. It's not like this uphill climb, which I think is probably one of the easiest way the capitalist system like tricks us, is that it tries to convince us that yes, there is a ladder for you to climb, and yes, meritocracy is real, and if you just work hard, you'll one day end up there, but you can keep doing and climbing and only staying in this active divine masculine mindset of thinking that if you just keep doing, if you are constantly active, you'll somehow end up in your end goal. It's gonna be a doozy because it's gonna throw you things like the panoramic, right? COVID. Who would have thought? Like, for so many people who are middle class and up, at least I was just going on my merry way thinking, okay, I'm gonna have this career when I finish my grad school, and then I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that, and then the panoramic hit. And then I was like, I hate everything I've ever been taught to want. It doesn't fulfill me, it doesn't satisfy me, it's not something that makes my soul sing. It has been a really good reminder in the sense that life will never be linear, and there will never be a set formula or solution or answer to success. Everybody has their own journey, and it looks differently for everybody. It's a scary thing because that's actually then accepting more responsibility and more agency, because now you have the freedom to imagine what you want your life to look like, and we will circle back to that. The second thing that I learned in therapy that absolutely blew my mind came from journaling, which I know sounds super simple, don't click out of the video yet, but I think it's important to notice when we're overanalyzing or reflecting versus when we're actually deconstructing and getting to the nitty-gritty of our issues. I used to call myself like a very self-reflexive person. I used to pride myself on being analytical, very critical thinker. I was very good at finding networks of issues, and so I was able to apply that to myself, and I thought that was self-growth. I was able to like connect all the different ways I was self-sabotaging, and then I'd be like, okay, that means I have anxiety, and then I would leave it at that. Or I would connect all the ways that I failed to communicate my needs to people, and then I would be like, okay, so I have an issue with boundaries, and then I would leave it at that, but I would never go any deeper. One, because I didn't know how to, and two, because that's much more frightening without anybody guiding you. So once I started therapy and they taught us to keep a journal where we would write based off of the prompts from each sort of module or course that we were doing, the tactic was incredibly different in how we dissected our issues. For example, let's take the boundary setting problem that I have. There's a huge difference between being self-aware and actually understanding where your issues come from. And that's, I think, the key thing to ask yourself. For me, it was asking myself, okay, where did I learn this behavior? What were my first early memories in my childhood where I saw the people who I was inspired by, or, you know, the people that I modeled my behavior off of? Who was struggling to set boundaries? So where did I learn this from? And what were the consequences of setting boundaries? Or what was the shadow aspect that I was afraid of, right? So a lot of the times for me, like when I don't set my boundaries, it's because I'm afraid of being unlikable, I'm afraid of being too aggressive, too dominant, and then that of course traces back to like being raised in a patriarchal society where women are just not valuable unless they're passive and docile and say yes to everything. There's a lot of narratives that you can dissect and you can trace back to like the earliest memories you've ever had. And that has been so crucial to my self-healing journey because, first of all, I'm writing things down so I can clearly see the way that it has built up over my life. It's like seeing the gunk and the layers of it build up. You can say things like, oh, I'm insecure. But once you actually write it down and ask yourself why and who taught you that and why you think you're not worthy of some things, it strikes you. Because I always thought I was a very confident person. I always thought I had a lot of self-love and self-worth. And until I actually wrote things down, I realized that I had way more things that I need to work out, which isn't a bad thing. It just means that now I actually am self-aware rather than just self-thinking. The third crucial thing that I learned in therapy is the fact that we as adults and young adults don't really think about imagining or playing as much anymore. I remember when I was younger, I was always buried in my Barbies and I would always imagine parallel universes. I would come out of movies and me and my brother would like pretend that we were in different fantasy worlds. I think that we've become afraid to do that. I think that we don't have the bravery to do that anymore, which is fair. Like, it's not our fault. I think a lot of imagining and play is scorned and shamed because there's a lot of fear about poverty, really. There's a lot of fear about not being successful. There's a lot of fear of not getting a good job or not having a stable income, and those are all extremely valid fears, especially in this economy. But those fears, that lack mentality, keeps us from imagining things that we may want for ourselves. Like, what's our own definition of success outside of capitalism? If we didn't have a fear of not being able to pay for our needs and wants, what would be our dream job? What do we actually want outside of capitalist definitions of success? One of the books that really helped me think through this is The Art of Nonconformity, which I highly recommend. This book is filled with a bunch of examples of successful people in their own right and from producing income from doing things that they love. One of the biggest questions that I struggled with in therapy, that I was confronted with all the time, was what did I actually want, right? What did I want to manifest? What did I want to attract into my life? What would my dream life look like? It was imagining a future that I had control over, and yet I felt completely debilitated. I had no idea what I wanted. I had no idea what my future career would look like. I had no idea what I wanted in a future partner, what I wanted my dream house to look like, what I wanted my daily routine to look like. I was just like, okay, I know I like to read, I know I like to write, I know I like to learn about these topics, but I don't have a dream job. And one, that needs to be normalized, but two, the only way to work through that is by allowing yourself to imagine, by allowing yourself to play, by giving yourself permission to believe that you are worthy of the things that seem outlandish or unconventional or nonconformist. I think a lot of the times we actually know what we want. I think that comes from deep within us. I think those things have always been there, especially if we were children who were allowed and had the privilege to play around. But when we grow up and we learn all of these programmings from society, we learn how to suppress and shove down our own dreams and needs because they seem too far away, or they didn't seem practical, or they didn't seem like they would gather enough income for a successful life. That has been one of the biggest things that I really needed to claw my way out of. I don't know why that was the analogy, but it was really like, you know, in Cadet Kelly, where she's in that scene and she has to like go through military training and she's crawling through all that mud and everything is dirty and it sucks and it's raining and she's like half crying and she wants to give up. That was kind of the feeling, because I was like, I can't do it, I'm not strong enough to do this, I'm not made for this. And then I got to the root of the issue. It was the fact that I felt unworthy of receiving the life that I know is my right, receiving the life that I know I could build and be successful at. And also the fact that I just didn't believe that I deserved a kind of happiness that I could create for myself. I just believed that the only happiness that exists is the happiness that society has taught me to want, and therefore the lifestyle attached to that happiness is the only lifestyle I should want. And then when I finally deconstructed those ideas and really got into the root of why I couldn't seem to think for myself and I couldn't seem to imagine a life beyond what has been spoon-fed to me, it just opened up a whole new world. And it also took so much pressure off of my shoulders, because no longer was I worrying about like, okay, what if I don't get the perfect job when I graduate? All of those questions of disaster just completely left. I no longer worry about an inconceivable future. I relax at it, because that means that I have complete control and agency of being able to create that. The fact that I can't see the next 10 years of my life in terms of rigid boundaries of jobs and career ideas is a good thing, because that means I now have the space to do whatever it is I want that actually matters to me. Not to like mess around or whatever, but actually to start from the ground up and build an idea of a beautiful life that comes from inside rather than from what people have taught me. And learning these 3 lessons has completely changed the way I work with myself. I work with my past and my future. And it takes a lot of the weight off of my shoulders. It's essentially minimizing the amount of energy I use every day to worry about things that haven't happened and have already happened and therefore I can't control. And I hope that by adopting some of these lessons, you'll be able to gain some peace of mind as well, and hopefully be able to build the future that you want to actually live. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please support me and my channel by either subscribing, liking this video, sharing it somewhere or with somebody, commenting your own lessons that you've learned if you're going through your own self-growth / self-healing journey. I would love to hear what you have been learning. And that's it from me. I hope you have a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!